disclaimer to start. Unlike the Greatest Generation episode of this series, which dealt mostly with the popular image of a generation of people, this video is about an actual generation of people, and I will be making some occasionally harsh-sounding observations about that generation of people. So if you happen to be one of that generation of people, please don't feel insulted. Don't take any of this personally. I'm not intending to condemn you as an individual, just your generation overall. That doesn't sound any better. Anyway, I'm sorry, but here are 5 stupid things I've noticed about baby boomers. They're the most selfish generation ever. See what I mean? Anyway, nobody's calling these folks the greatest generation, are they? I mean, I love my parents as much as the next guy, but on the whole, their generation has more than a few things to be embarrassed about. Their parents in the greatest and silent generations fought in World War II, flew people to the moon, advanced the cause of civil rights, and then the baby boomers came of age and got busy resting on their parents' laurels. They weren't all bad, of course. No generation of people is all bad, except for the Gilded Age. But generally speaking, they did make quite a mess around here. For example, they destroyed the middle class. The American economy boomed after World War II. Labor unions were strong, wages were high, millions of workers were able to earn a good living and save for a comfortable retirement. Then, beginning in the 1970s, labor unions were weakened, wages stagnated, taxation became more regressive, and the disparity between the wealthy and the poor began to grow wider than it had been since the 1920s. The result of all of this, the middle class began to erode. Naturally, the wealthy still did okay, but things have been getting worse and worse for everyone else over the last 40 years or so. And they didn't just fuck up the economy, they wrecked the federal government. I'm not trying to say that our federal government here in the US was ever anywhere close to perfect. I'm just saying that when the baby boomers took over, they made it a hell of a lot worse. Under their watch, social welfare programs that had actually helped to reduce the rate of poverty were gutted, and special interest groups like the religious right and the gun lobby were able to gain a powerful and enduring influence over Congress. And as if all of that wasn't bad enough, they left their mark on the military as well. Boy howdy. They started wars for their children to fight. I'm personifying an entire generation of people, which isn't entirely fair, but still, just think about how fucked up it is that so many baby boomers voted for and supported not one, but 2 wars beginning in the early 2000s. These folks lived through the Vietnam era, when many of them were rightly pissed off about having to go fight in a war that they didn't think was necessary or just. And what do 30 years later? Only the exact same thing that they had protested against. Now, maybe they figured that since they had to put up with that kind of shit from their parents, their children shouldn't have it any better. I don't know, it's certainly possible. That mentality is detectable in areas well beyond the military. The notion of giving your children a better world than the one your parents gave you seems to have gone out of fashion with many baby boomers. And that's not the worst part. They blame the next generation for problems baby boomers created. Listen to some of the common complaints about Americans of my generation from Americans of my parents' generation. We have too much debt. We don't know the value of a dollar. We move back in with mom and dad even after we've graduated college. We're politically apathetic. And to all of those problems, I have but one question in response. Whose fucking fault is that? Is it the fault of my generation? Or is it the fault of the generation who allowed education costs in this country to skyrocket? Is it the fault of those working for the minimum wage, or is it the fault of those who allowed the buying power of the minimum wage to shrink almost continuously for the last 50 years? Is it the fault of those who don't vote, or is it the fault of those who convinced them that there was nothing and no one worth voting for? Now, I'm certainly not saying that my generation has no responsibility for those problems and many others. I'm just saying that if my generation is unable to provide a better life for their children, then we can at least take some cold comfort in the fact that we were just following the example that our parents set for us. The hardest part is only picking 5. Catch you next time.